Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with a world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Hey, welcome everybody. Happy Friday. Again, Krista is out of town, so I am left here to hold down the fort. We have in Studio B, Tex. Studio C, we have Bigfoot Michigan Rob. And in Studio D, we have a special guest tonight. It's Ryan Edwards. Hi, Ryan.
If Rob had quit pushing button.
Oh, Tex, you're behind my icon there, buddy.
Yeah.
No, I've got my own icon up.
Okay, I certainly see that. Thank you for that.
I swear, I have worked all day, and it has not been the best day. And I'm going to say that I have been looking forward to this show all day.
I have also been working all day and didn't have a bad day. But I want to say thank you, Eve. She says Tex has the best voice. Thank you very much. And the reason I don't have my camera on is I'm struggling with something because, well, tomorrow's my birthday.
Yes, it is.
So I started earlier, and I don't know if anybody would. I don't know. I don't want to run people off. I'm in my birthday suit.
Oh, Tex! Yeah. But you know what? With the new body you're sporting, I'd be naked too.
Thank you, Catherine Gray. Well, all right. Here comes the unveiling.
Peel it back. All right.
Very nice. Doing a little burlesque, he was.
Very nice.
Hey, Brandy. Wait a minute. Just before we get started, I just want to say this. We heard about Gary Spike Sr. being in the hospital. Our prayers and thoughts and love go out to him, and we hope he comes out quickly. And I just don't know what to say right now. I mean, he scares me because that man will go over and beyond when he knows that he can't. And I just hope he comes out quickly and healthy this time.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. He worries me all.
Yes, he does.
Time.
Yes, he does.
This last trip out, we finally got him to relax. He didn't bring hardly any. He actually packed light. And he didn't have a whole lot of stuff set up. The only thing we had to do was carry our fishing gear back and forth to the river. And we had a blast.
Awesome. But again, our thoughts and prayers are out there for him. What were you going to say, Rob? I'm so sorry for cutting you off.
I really was impressed with your little spin on in Studio B, Studio C. I like that. I wonder where you got there. Awesome.
I learned that from one of my best friends.
Yeah, you did.
Thank you for all the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. But this show is not about us. It's not about me and my. I'm closer to 60 than I am 50 now, and it scares the living crap out of me. But
I know it's all about me, Tex, and Ryan. You're gonna have to take the back seat for this show.
I'm okay with that.
But Ryan dresses how I wish my wife had let me dress.
Yeah, he always has that cool look to him. We go to the conferences or just see him, like he went to Brown Springs with us. I mean, he just has that cool look. Like,
Well, it's like
he's
Doc
cool.
Holliday walks in wherever you're at. I mean,
Yeah, it's just cool. Tex and I are out there. got our hats on. We're like, yeah, well, it's just another day.
Yeah, and hey Ryan, you got to move that. What is that? A Ruger up over your shoulder? That handgun there? You got to move that a little closer so we get the full view of it.
It's a Star Wars blaster. It's a prop
Okay.
blaster.
You know.
My guns are somewhere else.
I love it.
We don't
I
show
love
those
it.
on here.
We don't do that.
Okay. No. Well,
Look at
and
you.
thank you, Ryan, for coming on today. I kind of called him at last minute. I'm thinking, why not? We'll have a fourth person on the panel. I realized that I'm trying to think here, that our name for the show is like Paranormal Encounters and More. But as we know, paranormal just means things that science cannot explain. So it
Like
could be
me.
just about anything. So unfortunately, the paranormal people think of ghosts, but it's not all that. But we have Ryan. Ryan has just released his second book. When was that? Just like last month or the month before, like 2 months ago? It was just recently.
Yeah, February 19th.
Yeah, I knew it was just recent. Why don't you just go ahead and tell us about the first book and then lead us into the second book and what that's about?
Of course. Well, my first book got released back in 2021, Cryptids of the World, a guidebook to the menagerie of enigmatic creatures seen around the world. It's kind of like what Tex likes to put, it's kind of like a encyclopedia of cryptids, kind of like a modern-day bestiary, a way of like each page is dedicated to a certain cryptid. You can look at it. It's really simple to read, kind of like, okay, if I need to look up what the Alatma High is, I need to see what Bigfoot is. Very simple description, very simple what I believe the creature might be, because with me, origins of cryptids is very important, because I want to know where these creatures are from. Like, an animal just doesn't pop up out of nowhere. That's not how science works. And my second book's really the emphasis of that. It's right here. Sasquatch, a brief history of a living legend. It's pretty much the possible evolutionary origins of Sasquatch. Because ever since I was a kid, I've researched Sasquatch. Heck, I think I got into cryptozoology when I was 6. And ever since then, I've looked at Sasquatch through the lens of a biological creature living in the woods. So if it is that, how can we explain it? I talk about its ecology, its behavior, its possible biology, like possible, why does it look the way it does? Why does it act the way it does? And then I bring up certain characteristics like, okay, what are good candidates for Sasquatch? There's 3 main candidates I bring up in the book. I bring up Gigantopithecus, because any Bigfoot book's got to bring up Giganto at some points. Even though I don't agree with that hypothesis, I bring up Paranthropus, a evolutionary offshoot of our own lineage that occurred about several million years ago. Then I bring up Dryopithecus, an ancient Miocene ape that was indigenous to Europe. And it actually means oak ape. This ape actually used to live in oak forests and swamps, very similar to what we now see in the Pacific Northwest. That's what my possible best candidate for Sasquatch is. And I go into, like, really let's look at Sasquatch through a prehistoric lens. It's a piece of what we call megafauna, like mammoths, saber-toothed cats, American lions, all these animals that were giant. Bigfoot, if you put them right next to it, it fits perfectly. That's why I like the title. Of course, the art is done by the great Jason McLean, good friend of ours, and it has a Smilodon and a woolly mammoth there. And if you look at it, it fits perfectly. That's what pretty much this book's about. It's primarily the origins of Sasquatch and kind of looking at it from a different lens, not from a modern perspective, but from a prehistoric perspective.
Wow. Now I know that you're going to be speaking at the Bigfoot conference there in Fouke, Arkansas. Is that correct?
Yes, I will. April 26th and 27th. My lecture, I will be going over Well, the southern Sasquatch. Like, how is it different from the one seen in the Pacific Northwest? And also possible origins of Sasquatch down here. Maybe some other cryptids that might go hand in hand with the Sasquatch seen here in the South.
Well, somebody else we know
Yeah.
is going to be speaking at that conference also. So if you're in the area, around the area, or just want to get away for the weekend, go to Falk, Arkansas, April, 26th and 27th, I believe, and check it out. It's always a good one. You know, the legend of Boggy Creek will live forever. You know what I'm saying? It will live forever. So I'm really excited about it, and I'm pretty sure Loud Blackburn will be there, and a couple other people. I can't think off the top of my head right now, but it's going to be a good time. So, and myself and my daughter, I think, are going to make the trip just to, I guess, give Tex moral support. I guess.
Oh, God knows I need it.
Oh, next, I was just about to say you don't need any support. You can show up in your birthday suit a couple months
Hey,
removed.
the support that I wear these days separates and lifts. So, you know, hey.
I have been so waiting for this show all day. It's just all day. I just knew it. But you know, Ryan has also been out with us to Brown Springs. He did go with us for the weekend. And what did you think about this place? I mean, because everybody's heard, you know, I've talked about it. Tex and I have talked about it. Tex has talked about it. What did you think about Brown Springs?
Well, first time going out there. Actually, I'll have to admit it. Actually, one of my first times ever doing field work when it comes to cryptozoology. It was very interesting. Like going out there, walking those fields at night, driving those fields at night, Thurman at night. You get a different feeling. I know I've heard stuff. Then those nights, I know I heard something out there, which that was my first time possibly hearing a big Sasquatch howl. And then I know also you get a certain feeling when you're out there, like you're being watched, like there's something out there. Like there was one experience we were driving on the road, and then that complete silence. That from all the sound in the woods to complete silence. First time I ever experienced that, and I'm like, okay, no, yeah, that is a weird feeling. That I don't like this. I am uncomfortable right now, and I know there's something near us. What it is, I don't know, but it is a really interesting place out there.
It definitely was. And you know, you also took a trip up with me to the cemetery.
Yes.
And that place is a little different. From day to night, it's a little different, isn't it?
Yeah, like I went going out there. Like all my friends call me a paranormal rock. I really don't feel the paranormal type things going on, but like I felt like there's something out there. I couldn't really see a lot because first of all, I have glasses. I'm blind anyway. Second of all, it's nighttime. I'm gonna be super blind. And third of all, it's just like I saw some movement out there in the woods, like from tree to tree, things like that. And I'm like, no, you notice something out there. You just know it. You get that kind of sixth sense, they like to call it, about it. Like something's watching you. Something, it's something that's watching you. That's not just an animal. It's something intelligent. It's most likely it's a person watching you. But what they're watching you, they don't have a heartbeat. You know that there's no other person out there. You're like, okay, that's actually one of the first time I've ever felt that out there in the woods, especially. Like I felt it before, but not much.
Right.
Rob, you're like a kid. Quit pushing the buttons.
Don't push the red button.
Stop pushing the buttons.
Put your hands in your pockets.
I'm not going to comment. I did that for a purpose. Thank you. 1, 2, 3,
Thank you.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4. And I wanted to thank Linda and welcome her to the membership. I've seen her in the very beginning before we even came on. Thank you and welcome. So here we are. We're sitting here and we're talking about your books, Ryan, but we didn't even say where can we find them.
Of course. Well, you can find them, of course, on Amazon.com. Look up Sasquatch: A Prehistory of a Living Legend, or look up Cryptid Chronicles. Also, if you look on Eerie Lights Publishing, that's the publishing company that published Sasquatch: A Prehistory. It's owned by David Weatherly, a good friend of mine and a great researcher in this field. He's also on his website. You can look it up from there. Because this book was made by not just myself, but it was kind of a coalition of a lot of other researchers. Like I talked to other researchers about it. The foreword's written by our good friend Ken Gerhardt, and of course the art's done by Jason McLean. So it's kind of like it's my book. Yes, the words are, but it's a lot of other people that came into it, and I really got to thank all those people that have helped me out making this second book.
Awesome. Okay, so here we are. Who's going to start?
Well, I'd like because the thing about his books, especially his first one, he goes over so many cryptids that are the lesser known cryptids, but a lot of people. So, and I think I put him on the spot last time I talked to him.
Probably.
Absolutely. Well, that's me. But you got one in there. What is it called? The goober snatch or something like that. I can't remember.
Group slang.
Yeah.
Jeez.
What is it?
Group slang. It's a cryptid from African folklore. Stories go that it's an elephant with a serpent-like tail, serpent-like trunk. Some people have speculated this might be some type of living sauropod or some type of living dinosaur, but most likely it's kind of what we call a chimera, a mix of different animal characteristics put together, a combined characteristics, I like to call them. And it's most likely just an animal from when elephants used to live in the area. The area where these root slangs are talked about, elephants are no longer indigenous, but it's most likely what we call a cultural legend or a cultural memory of living elephants that used to live there. Same thing like with the Mokele Mbembe of the Congo. The Mokele Mbembe, if you look at the original origins of the Lingala language, they talk about an animal having a horn, something very similar to a rhino or an elephant. But then when you look at the modern day perspective, they call it a sauropod, a dinosaur-like creature. But the original Lingala people talked about more of an elephant-like creature. But in the Congo, elephants are no longer indigenous. So it's another again of a cultural memory. The Aboriginal people of Australia have shown that most cultural memories can go back as far back as about 5,000 to 6,000 years. And these elephants haven't lived there for about 5,000 to 6,000 years. So it's most likely a cultural memory of indigenous animals that are no longer indigenous to an area.
Wow. Well, you don't think about cryptozoology a lot, except for when it comes to Dogman or Bigfoot, in the mainstream of things. But then, you're going way deep into these things and finding these creatures talked about in like you said, folklore that you've never even heard of. And it's just like, wow.
Like whenever anyone asks you what's your favorite cryptid, everyone's got to go with Sasquatch or Dogman or something. But actually, for me personally, the cryptid that got me into cryptozoology was actually thunderbirds. Like one of my earliest memories of being a kid was being in my living room and watching Monster Quest and watching that Thunderbird episode and seeing that creature fly across the screen and being like, oh, they're all real life monsters. And that got me into Thunderbirds, and I found Sasquatch, and then Nessie, all these other creatures, and then you start to realize that there is a kind of a unnatural world, I like to call it, of cryptids out there. But even in my own mind, I'll tell people that not all these creatures probably exist in the first place, or if they did, they're probably already extinct. Like, for instance, the Morosi of Kenya. The Morosi is described as a solitary spotted lion, but those have not been seen since the 60s. So the likelihood of those being still extant is very unlikely. I mean, a lot of cryptids in my book I reference in Cryptids of the World most likely are just misidentifications, are probably extinct, or just straight up hoaxes. Like I bring up hoaxes in the book itself, like the creature like the Rao. The Rao was referenced in Papua New Guinea. A colonialist couple went out there and they said, "Oh, we found this tribe that had this dinosaur-like creature, and it had a horn, it had a frill, it had a T-Rex-like head and a long sauropod-like neck." And then when researchers went out there, these indigenous people never even existed. So literally, it's a cryptid hoax, but I still put them in there because it kind of shows a kind of a way to like learn from our past and learn from our mistakes and our ways of looking at the thing, looking at mistakes and learning from them.
Thanks, Donnie.
He's right though. The man will wear Ryan Edwards will. The man will wear all black with a leather vest and 1,000 degrees Texas weather. That ain't
And be
no lie.
perfectly fine in it.
The man's a
Perfectly
badass.
fine.
I have been called a goth Indiana Jones before, so it fits
And
with
thank
the
you, Hawk. Thank you, Hawk, for the memberships. We appreciate
Yes.
you.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, I wanted to ask you a question, Ryan. Like Tex alluded about your first book, and I seen your first book when I met you a couple years back.
Rob,
Nick. What?
I saw your first book. You're not in Texas.
I hang out with you enough. Now, I'm going to tell you
That counts.
something, right? Okay, you just
I
changed the
done
subject.
seen his other book.
I done got a question for Ryan.
Make a question.
Thank
they
you,
can't
too,
read.
Shadows. Thank
Because
you.
Ryan, I got to ask you something. Now that Tex totally, I know what my question is, but now I have to bring up
Of course.
something. For being a Texas boy, Ryan, your accent certainly is not Texan. To me.
Ryan speaks better than we usually do down here.
I
That's
try
what
to
I'm
do.
saying. You sound like an Englishman.
Ryan lives in the big city.
Yeah, see, Ryan, I was about to say you sound way better than Tex. Dad gummit.
I'm a good old Texas boy, but I guess my accent, I don't even know where it comes from because like everyone in my family Southern. But I guess I always like to reference a good old country boy like a good old boy like me from Don Williams. I learned how to talk to be on a guy on the news. I try to because think about it. If you have a Southern accent, that's 200 IQ points immediately off, which I try to go against. But I'm like, okay, someone hears me say, "Howdy, y'all. How you guys doing?" Everyone's like, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about."
Yeah.
Which it's sad, but it's a kind of a truth for them. A lot of times, especially in the United States. So I guess with my accent, I've kind of grabbed it over the years. Like a lot of people ask if I'm like, "Oh, are you from the North? Are you from England?" I'm like, "No, I'm from Texas, San Antonio." I'm sorry, guys. I guess it's also I had a speech impairment as a child that might also be affecting me. I'm not 100% sure though.
Yeah, I'm going to get on with the
sure
question.
that
I
has
appreciate the answer. I guess it's just a cross we have to bear if you live down south. Now, moving on to my question.
Oh, I had two questions. Oh no.
No, your first book, as Tex did say, what he spoke of earlier during the broadcast, the Encyclopedia of Cryptids. I've got to ask you, man, because that's very impressive. There's things in that book I never heard of. I've never found online. I never thought of looking for them online, to be honest. How long did it take you to do the research and put that together? It was something you put a lot of thought and effort into.
Yeah, that's something that maybe 10 years of research because I started working on that maybe actually writing it down maybe high school back maybe like senior year, so maybe like 2019 2020 because pretty much what it was is like, okay, I have all this knowledge, let me put it all down in a book and like a journal and then just have it all put together so I don't forget stuff because if you start remembering too much you start forgetting stuff too. So I kind of put it all down in a journal and I'm like, there's a lot of perspectives in here that I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about. So once COVID happened and then quarantine and all that, I actually had time off of my school. So I was actually, okay, let me put all this together, put it into a book, start typing it all up, print it out, and then actually send it into a publisher. And they're like, yeah, we would love to have this. And then I went from there. Initially, it was supposed to be just a personal journal of mine, and then it kind of became a book that I really thought, like, okay, I'm no one really seen in the field. Let me kind of release this as my, like, not magnum opus, but as an introduction to the field. Because a lot of times as researchers, anyone can say, oh, I have a podcast, oh, I have this. But if you say, oh, I have a book, a lot of people might take you more seriously, especially my age. Because, hell, right now I'm only 22. If if I didn't have anything behind me, people are like, oh, he's just some young kid. But if I say, hey, no, I well researched, I have 2 books out, it kind of adds a little bit of credibility to my name.
It's certainly a great resume starter for being 22. My
Yeah.
resume at 22 was 7-Eleven in the local gas station, so I'm very impressed. And I'm not being facetious. I mean that. I do mean that.
Of course.
Get my humor. I'm giving you a compliment. But yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I mean, there's not many 22-year-olds out there that are even interested in writing a book at this point in their life.
Writing.
So
Hell,
it's fantastic that you've chosen a subject, of course, that all of us love.
Yeah.
But to write 2 books by the age of 22 is fantastic.
Yes. And
Hell,
it's like,
any 22-year-olds can read a book these days. What are you talking about writing one?
You know, Tex, that's a story. That's another
I think
show,
they
man.
can read them. I just don't think they care.
yeah.
they got a lot of pictures
As an
in them,
educator, I know. Like, I work in a school. I'm an educator. I work in a middle school. Most of my 6th through 8th graders read at a elementary school level, and they're always like, Mr. Edwards, how can you help us? I'm like, guys, I write books. I can help you. I got you guys. Because most of them, it's also the attention span. Not a lot of them can just sit down and read anymore, and that's kind of something that's sad that I've seen happen throughout the years, and it's just kind of sad to see.
Yeah, you're right.
And so my second question, then, with the follow up to your second book.
Donnie's been drinking tonight.
You gotta love Donnie.
Yeah, Donnie. When I was,
He wrote a video game strategy guide. Just saying.
yeah, I like that. Donnie always ends his words, his sentences with "just saying." I love that. Donnie Show says stuff. Subscribe on YouTube. I have. He has 260 subscribers and climbing. Yes, Donnie. I know all the channels. So my second question, the follow up to the first, regarding your book. So was the second book, and I'll ask you, and just be honest, I mean, or give me whatever your answer is, because you're very knowledgeable. You've done a lot of research, 10 years for this book, and you've been into Bigfoot since the age of 6. Was it easier to write the second book simply because of the knowledge you have, or did you still have to put a lot of time and effort into that? And I know you put a lot of time and effort, don't get me wrong. Was it easier, though, or was it the same?
With me, actually, it was kind of a little harder because, of course, for the other book, each one's a different cryptid. You don't really have to have that, like, flesh between there to, like, connect it all. But with this one, I was like, oh, it's all about the same thing. I need to have all that, like, connective tissue in a book of, like, okay, I need to go from this subject to this subject to this subject to this subject. So, like, the logistics of it, the planning of it was a lot more intense than Cryptid of the World. Cryptid of the World, it's just an alphabet of monsters. Cool. This one, I have to talk about, first I talk about the ecology, then I talk about the physical description, then I talk about prehistoric North America, then I talk about candidates. So it's like, this one, the research was there, because this is kind of a book I've always wanted to do, because it's kind of something that you don't really ever see anyone talk about. Like, there's only a couple people I've seen in this field really talk about, okay, the origins of Sasquatch and where they come from. Like, there's only maybe 2 or 3 other researchers I know that have done that. So when I was making this book, it was kind of a little easier when it comes to the research, but logistically a little harder because I have to make sure it all connects in the end. Like, a lot of times I would hit a point, I'm like, oh, I don't want to write about this as much, but I have to write about it. And a lot of friends of mine are like, oh, why don't you just jump ahead? I'm like, I can't do that, because if I jump ahead, how am I going to make sure it connects to what I'm skipping over? Like, that's why I'm having an issue actually right now in my third book. I'm hitting a point that the research is a little harder, and it's something I really don't want to write about as much, but I can't just skip ahead, because how can I make sure everything connects in the end? So overall, it's a little bit easier book to write, but it was just a lot more intense research, a lot more because I want to make sure my research and my science is based in natural science, not just woo, not just I heard this in a scientific journal. It must be true. I want to go back and actually research it. And I've talked to researchers like heck. I even talked to Dr. Jeff Meldrum while writing the book. Like, hey, does this sound like this sounds probable? Does this sound probable? And other researchers like that. And because I want to make sure that this is as scientifically accurate as it can be. Even though Sasquatch is not a known species, it truly is a science, and I want it to be scientifically accurate.
You know,
Go ahead.
I want to get back to the whole Gigantopithecus thing. I got why is so many people in this field convinced that wasn't Bigfoot, and it's just a way for them to go see these 10-foot apes did exist, or sorry guys, critters did exist, but we're not going to call them Bigfoot, but we still have proof of them in the fossil record. So it looks like to me that it's possible that mainstream science came out and gave us what we wanted. There was a 10-foot bipedal ape. They just went about it differently and without admitting that it was actually Bigfoot. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I see what you're trying to get at. Well, with one thing is also a lot of scientists never really said, okay, this is a bipedal ape, for instance. Rolf von Klundewald, when he first discovered Giganto, he even speculated this ape is most likely a quadruped. And in recent years, through carbon isotope dating and all that, and carbon isotope analysis of the teeth, it has been shown that this creature was primarily ate C3 plants like bamboo, grasses, things like that. Most likely, it was non-bipedal because just by the size of the jawline, if you look at the jaw, it correlates to a creature that's quadrupedal. And so most likely, ecologically, this creature does not match with Sasquatch. But size-wise, yes. That's why I bring up Giganto, because it shows apes can get that size. But
Right.
we can't just correlate one thing and say, oh, it's automatically this was Sasquatch. Biologically, yes, but ecologically and also diet-wise, it probably was not like Sasquatch. For instance, one thing I bring up in my book is dentition. Dentition teeth are very important to animals. It shows, are they omnivores? Are they carnivores? Are they herbivores? The dentition on Giganto signifies a herbivore, an animal that can crush hard plants, things like that. While most likely Sasquatch is a omnivore. We know they eat meat as well. So
I get, and that's one of the first questions I get asked every time I start talking to somebody about Bigfoot. Is like, well, what does he eat? Or, and because a lot of times people are still convinced there's just one, but
yeah,
well, what does Bigfoot eat? My answer is whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, like ecologically, Sasquatch is what we call a opportunistic omnivore, not an apex predator. Of course not. Apex predators are things like bears, tigers, things like that. It is an apex animal, but an apex omnivore because it doesn't just eat primarily meat. It most likely also eats plants. Look at modern day grizzly bears. Look at black bears. That's why, for instance, my research, I go into black bears a lot because black bears are kind of a signifier species. If black bears can live in an area, so can Sasquatch, because they survive off the same type of things, same type of plants, same type of environment, same type of hiding away from humans. So with Giganto, I do believe it could be a cryptid, yes. But if you look at, let's just say, the Yeren or the Mandibarung or the other Asian Sasquatch-like species, those correlate more to Giganto. The ones, this North American Sasquatch does not really correlate to Giganto, at least not ecologically. That's why I bring up other candidates like Dryopithecus. Dryopithecus, in my opinion, correlates a lot more to ecologically to Sasquatch than any other species.
Yeah. Tex, you have a follow-up question? Because I had a question that
Go ahead.
spurred on. Ryan, you mentioned Dr. Meldrum, and I haven't really. I think Dr. Meldrum's a good sound resource. I think you can listen to his theories and hypotheses. But I got to ask you, because I haven't asked anybody this in a long time. I want your take on this, because I don't know. I flip-flop with that metatarsal break. That metatarsal break. What do you think about that? And for those that don't know, could you give a brief definition?
Of course. Metatarsal break. If you see in most Sasquatch footprints, I have a couple actually on my wall I'm looking at right now. It shows a break within the middle of the foot. For instance, a lot of apes have this, and also early hominids. Australopithecines had this. Paranthropus had this. Because think about it, if you're climbing a tree, you don't just want your toes, you want your whole foot to wrap around it. So this metatarsal break shows a bipedalism that happened a lot later than human bipedalism, or a bipedalism that was made for a more robust, larger animal. For instance, metatarsal break would also help with a larger, heavier species. Most people have speculated Sasquatch is probably 1,000 pounds. So
That's why I have a metatarsal break.
Yes, the metatarsal break would help with that. Like if you look at the foot morphology of Sasquatch, it correlates exactly to what eyewitnesses describe. A large, very heavy primate. That's why a lot of times I look at, for instance, the Bigfoot, the footprint finds as a great source of evidence. As well as one thing I go really, really into this book is handprints. I think Tex might have seen it when I went to the Texas Bigfoot conference last year. I brought a handprint from Paul Freeman, which was truly gigantic, and it shows this species has a very ape-like hand, not a very human-like hand.
Well,
that's
the
one big
handprints
question.
we pulled off in Brown Springs.
Yes, that's one thing I really bring up.
Located in a different position than a human.
Yeah, it's a lot lower, suggesting something that doesn't have what we call precision grip. We have precision grip. Our tongue can touch each one of our phalanges. These creatures can't do that. That's one big question I bring up in the book is, okay, if it's a primate, is it human or is it a ape? Human or ape? So I bring up, in my opinion, it's an ape because of just the morphology of it and also the behaviors. Think about it. With every hominid species, there is a correlating archaeological evidence of tool use and primates. Australopithecines use tools. Paranthropus use tools. Genus Homo use tools. Sasquatch aren't really seen with a correlating archaeological evidence of tool use. Yes, basic tools like any animal, like any chimp can use, like twigs, stones, things like that, but nothing we don't see Sasquatch use spears. So that's what most likely, to me, correlates to a non-human primate. Most likely some type of hominid, not hominin.
I will tell you something really briefly on the spear thing. I watched, this was on National Geographic, and anybody can find this. And it was about these ancient apes they found in the Amazon. And these apes, they were standing on two legs and they were fishing, okay, in the river, in the Amazon River that was flowing past them. And this is on film. It's not a picture. This was produced maybe 12, 15 years ago, well before advancements in CGI, certainly not artificial intelligence. But they had these apes. They looked like apes. They didn't look like Bigfoot. They looked more like a chimpanzee, gorilla type. But they had spears that they said were made, and they had spears in one arm, and they were actually going through the motion of spearing towards the fish in the river that went by them and caught them, literally. And I wish I had the link to that. It's on National Geographic, something about the rainforest apes. But yeah, I watched it.
Watching the movie Congo.
I never seen Congo.
There are no indigenous apes to South America, but
whatever it was, they were, again, it's National Geographic. I saw it a year or two ago, and I spoke about this a long time ago. But you look it up, I swear I seen it, and I wouldn't bring it up if I didn't see it. And I was like, wow, what is this? So I'm wondering if that is some sort of unknown cryptid that they spoke about. I don't know.
Possibility. I've heard stories of people referencing orangutans using spears, spear-like objects, so kind of skewer fish in the water, but a lot of times they're not successful. Their dexterity's not exactly there with their hands. But I've heard of, like, for instance, those stories a couple years ago. There was a fisherman that would always go to this area with orangutans, and he had a motorboat. And soon enough, the orangutans watched him. They jumped in the boat, and they were able to pull the crank and actually turn on the motor and actually almost drive the boat away because they had watched this human do it multiple times. It's like the idea of, like, monkey see, monkey do. Primates are very much, if we see something, we're going to try to do it ourselves. So something like that could be a learned behavior of, if they
Right.
see humans do it, they might try to do it themselves. Doesn't mean they came up with it themselves, but observational, they learn from another species.
Well, and I think as long as we think Bigfoot's been around, Sasquatch has been around, watching humans for thousands of years, there's no way they didn't. And if they're half as intelligent as we give them credit for, there's no way they didn't pick stuff up. You know?
Yes.
We've heard the very, very rare reports of supposedly they're using fire, and tools, but I don't think they're quite tech. I don't think they're quite that technology. That word advanced. Yeah, and it's it's a lot like it's no different, like you said. They learn from watching, but there are other species that have figured out how to do stuff on their own that we didn't show them.
Yes.
And I'll jump on my soapbox again about killer whales. We didn't teach killer whales to grab a shark and flip him over and put him in a catatonic state.
Yeah.
I mean, did we learn to get termites out of a mound with a stick from the monkeys, or did they learn from us?
Yeah. It's
They
like,
were here first. So
yeah, it's like, if you talk to any animal behavioral analysis or any human behavioral analysis, there's a big step between a species learning on their own versus learning it from another species. If you learn it on their own, that shows a lot more behavioral complex, a lot more intelligence right there. Because it's almost like your own idea of, like, imagination.
right.
Like a kid, when you imagine something, you're coming up out of it out of nowhere. That shows a lot more intelligence than, oh, if you see a truck, okay, that's a red truck. I can imagine it blue. Or talk to someone that's never seen a truck and describe that to them. That shows a lot more intelligence right there than bringing it up themselves. That's why, like, with Sasquatch, I believe, yes, they could possibly use, like, very basic tools, but also look at early hominid species, the Odowan tools that go back to about maybe 1.5 million years. That was early on in human origins. So I believe they could use very basic tools, but nothing as advanced as, like, something like Cro-Magnon or a Neanderthal could use modern day. That kind of suggests to me a more ape-like species, not a very human-like species.
I'm kind of
I
glad you're
think
on. Briefly text. Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, man. What's the difference? They the same or just two different, the same word verbiage?
They are two different species. Cro-Magnon were actually early Homo sapiens. Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, is a totally different species. They were never our ancestors. They diverged off of hominids about 3.6 million years ago. So away from ours. They were never really related to us. They were from an earlier expanse out of Africa, then evolved in Europe. We interbred with them later on, and now they're in our own lineage. Because if you look at the human DNA, about 6% of anyone that's not sub-Saharan African has about 6% Neanderthal DNA.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Sorry, Tex.
So why do you think we hear the stories of Sasquatch kidnapping the women? Do you think it's for breeding purposes or just entertainment?
Actually, it's an interesting fact because if you look at a lot of indigenous tribes of Africa, they actually reference gorillas kidnapping women and going into the mountains. But we now know that never happened.
No.
This is really before gorillas really were discovered. But they said yes, these large apes would take women and put them and take them into the hills. But we now know scientifically that never existed. But yet there's still stories of it. Even some of the early depictions of gorillas, they showed them with a woman under their arm running into the hills. I'm not saying this didn't happen in the first place, but it could still happen. Yes, there are a lot of stories of like Albert Alston. Look at the stories of people getting kidnapped by
Yeah.
Sasquatch. It could be for breeding purposes, yes. Also, could be for food purposes. Could be just out of just pure curiosity. Think of us when we discover a new species. What do? We take them out of their environment. Maybe if you're a young Sasquatch, you've never seen a human before. Hey, that thing looks like me, but without hair. I want to see it up close. Let me grab it and run away with it and see what happens. Maybe it's something like that. Because, on my opinion, I think Sasquatch have a very human level of intelligence, but just in a different area. We have religion, science, mathematics, philosophy. Sasquatch don't have that. They don't need to have that. Instead of having
Uh,
science and math, they have how to hide away from humans, how to live off the land, how to survive off the resources they have. They have the same intelligence as us, but just in a different area. And maybe they have that human level of curiosity as well.
oh, they're definitely curious. I can vouch for that.
Yes.
And so can Nicholas.
Yeah.
I know that story.
For those of you that don't know the story, me and Nicholas were out at Brown Springs by ourselves. The Not right before everybody else showed up, Ryan and Brandy included. And I'm not going to say it was Bigfoot. I didn't see him, but something came along and walking on 2 feet and sniffing around and poking his tent and got him a little worried. And something picked up that piece of firewood and chunked it over in the grass.
I know you don't want to call it a Bigfoot, but I'll call it something not human.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, or it could have been. I can't say it wasn't human, but and then we get, of course, the handprint. I'm not turning this into my show, but I do want to, Ryan. What do you've seen the handprints? What do you think about them?
With my opinion, they show something that's very non-human. Their thumb is distantly located away from their fingers. It's closer to the wrist, which to me signifies a more ape-like hand. With the known Sasquatch prints that we know are most likely Sasquatch handprints, they correlate very well to that. So with me, I think your handprints that you guys have are most likely Sasquatch because it shows a more ape-like hand, not a human-like hand. A lot of people are like, oh, what if it's not someone wearing a glove? How could someone wear a glove like that?
Well,
They're
in the
literally
dermal ridges, on the fingerprints themselves, we've had them looked at by experts, and they all said the same thing. I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you it's not human because the fingerprints run horizontal; they do not swirl.
Humans swirl, while primates, non-human primates, they have it's almost like little lateral lines right next to each other,
Yep.
parallel lines.
Mhm.
Their dermatoglyphics show that. Like the dermatoglyphics on the Freeman handprint show parallel lines right next to each other. So, like for instance, I'm always asked this question: for you, what's the best evidence for Sasquatch? I don't tell them footprints. I don't tell them videos. I don't tell them eyewitness accounts. I tell them one thing: it's the correlation between everything. How can a handprint that was taken in the 1980s up in Washington have a similar dermatoglyphics to one taken down here in Texas in 2020? Unless it's the same species. How can a footprint find in Washington from the 70s have a very similar dermatoglyphics to one taken in Louisiana in the 80s? Unless it's the same species. How does the Patterson Gimlin film, if you look at Patty's feet, her feet literally break midway. You know what that is? That's a mid-tarsal break. The mid-tarsal break wasn't talked about from Jeff Meldon until the 90s. Yet that film was in 1967. There's all these correlations, and even a correlation between known biological laws, like for instance, Bergman's law. The Bigfoot finds in the north are a lot larger than the ones in the south. Bergman's law states animals in higher latitudes are larger than ones in lower latitudes. So there's a lot of correlations between known biological laws, the evidence within the evidence, that shows that there's a true biological species behind Sasquatch. Now, what that species is, that's on speculation from there. But there is a lot of correlation there.
I find it almost comical now because I've been in this for a while, and I find it almost comical that with the physical evidence, we've got enough evidence to convict him and to convict Sasquatch in court, but they won't recognize it because flat out, I think they're afraid of the fallout.
Yes.
Be it monetary or panic wise, as far as everybody goes.
Because I've actually talked to a couple of researchers about this. Like, okay, Sasquatch discovery. What's the next step? For instance, let's just say I'm wrong and we discover Sasquatch and it's a human-like species and it's human. What happens next? Do we give them rights? Are they human? If we go shoot a Sasquatch, is that murder? If the humans live in the woods, like, I'll bring up the religious aspect. Are they saved? Are we going to go try to save Sasquatch? Are reverends going to go missionary, go be Sasquatch hunters? There's a lot of questions culturally, economically, and politically that we have to question before we ever discover this species. For instance, I talk about the timeline of discovery. For instance, gorillas. Gorillas were talked about for about 100 years before the first body was ever found. Sasquatch has only been talked about for the past 50 or 60 years. So on its timeline of discovery, we're not even close to the true discovery of the species. So there's a lot of steps we have to take before we even discover them. At least us regular people that are probably outside of the government that do know this animal exists, let's be honest. Like, there are people that do know this creature exists out there, but they won't share that information because of the backlash it will have. Like, for instance, a lot of people bring up the woodland owl of the Pacific Northwest, how logging companies lost millions of dollars because of that. Now, that was an owl. Imagine if a human-like species, because the Sasquatch is most likely our closest living relative. How's that going to affect national parks? How's that going to affect logging? How's that going to affect areas like that? And even Native Americans, like, how's that going to affect like reservations, things like that? Like, with the idea of like having another human-like species being out there that's not human but very similar to us.
I don't disagree with you. I think that somewhere down the line, on the family tree there, we went left and they went right or something. We zigged and they zagged, however you want to put it. But, and I don't know if they can interbreed. I have no clue. It's possible. Well, if you look at what was the one they caught in Russia and used for a slave for a while?
It's actually been proven that Zana was actually not even a Bigfoot at all. She was a sub-Saharan African. She was actually most likely an African slave from the slave trade that took place in the Ottoman Empire during that time.
Okay.
Like, recent discoveries have shown, like, actually I think recently they discovered Zana's body. And they took DNA samples, and she's 100% human.
Well, I know they had her son's body.
Yeah, quit.
And I know she supposedly drowned her first 4 offspring trying to clean them off or something. You hear a whole bunch of that stuff. But they kept her in a pit and just used her as a entertainment for the men of the village for a long time.
Like, I bring up Zana a lot because it kind of shows that most likely some people have speculated she's sub-Saharan African but the slave trade was banned in the Ottoman Empire for the past 60 years before that. most likely she could have been born and raised in the wild. There's stories of like feral humans, and she could have been one of those feral humans. And it's very sad. It's a very sad story if you think about it.
It is. It is.
And it's if you think of like what happened to her and her offspring after that, like Quits and the other ones of her family. Like it shows that they were a little bit stronger. They weren't exactly all the way similar to the people indigenous to the area. They were truly human. Yes, they were Homo sapien. So the ideas of like Zana was some Almasty or some Bigfoot-like creature, it's kind of unhinged thinking if you look at it now. Like, yes, there are stories of her being very hairy, very large, but if you look at the behavior she showed, it's very human-like. And now, through DNA evidence, has shown she was truly 100% human, but treated like an animal, which is the very sad part of it, and what became more of a cryptozoological idea than truly human rights, and go hand in hand with Bigfoot. If Bigfoot was discovered and we're treated like that, and it's proved to be human, like the idea of like human rights violations and things like that.
It's and us as, if you want to call us researchers or whatever, I think honestly Ryan's more of a researcher than I'll ever claim to be. But I go camping. He does research. But I don't think any of us haven't struggled with the, we want disclosure, but what happens afterwards? And, you can talk about the whole rumor of Theodore Roosevelt, putting in place the national parks for these critters. And it seems to be working for the most part if that was the deal and that was the plan. But
I don't know if people go missing, but yeah.
But if we, I'm going to say if, but I think I think we'll have disclosure in my lifetime. Certainly yours. But what's going to happen afterwards? I could care less about the lumber companies losing money. That part doesn't worry me. What worries me is the idiots they're going to want to put a head on the wall.
Yes.
That would be my biggest fear, definitely.
Yeah.
Is that they're just going to, now that they know that they're real, they're going to go out there and look for them.
I mean, they're already putting bounties on them. They're already putting laws in place not to harm them. So what to me, they're already recognized. They just, for some reason, just won't. It's kind of like
not put on any list anywhere. They're not put on the endangered species list yet.
Yeah.
It's that terrible word that we all know. It's called poaching.
Yeah.
Hey, is Bigfoot put on the endangered species list in the Pacific Northwest somewhere in Oregon?
I think in Washington State.
Washington State, I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and also that's the question too that I bring up. I think I brought up before. If Sasquatch is discovered tomorrow, what happens to the older Sasquatch researchers? Do the zoologists and primatologists take over and like, oh, we have this taken care of now. Don't worry. You discovered it. Now we take care of it. Or do the Sasquatch researchers keep going on with our research? Like, with me, I believe cryptozoology is the first step in zoology. First, we have stories of the creatures, and then we discover them. We just aren't at the discovery state yet. But when we get to that discovery step, do all the regular primatologists kick in? Like, oh no, you guys are still a bunch of crackpots. We have it taken over from here.
Let us show you how it's done.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that happening for sure.
Yeah.
It's just like the whole alien thing all over again. I mean, people have known about this for years and years and years, talked about it, da. They finally come out. It's the same stuff that we already knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think that this is what's going to happen. I mean, do we have to wait 80 years until they finally come up with something? or are they going to release it? I don't know.
Think of how many.
I still think we're on the same path with Sasquatch disclosure as we were with UFOs or whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
It took about 100 years for them to come off of it. And of course they crawfished on it, sure. But I think we're seeing the same steps being taken as far as desensitizing us to the news when it does break.
Yes. Like it's also, I think of like Sasquatch in media and also like other cryptids in media, how the media actually creates a cryptid. Like for instance, I was doing research on this a couple weeks ago. Nessie, the Loch Ness monster. Me personally, I believe there's something there at Loch Ness. I don't think it's a plesiosaur. But if you look at it, the first recorded story of Nessie came out in 1932, I believe. Guess what movie came out 2 months before that? The Lost World. The Lost World that showed a plesiosaur-like creature. And then if you look at like the eyewitness testimonies of Nessie, a lot of the times these flaps of sightings, these big groups of sightings, happen right after a Nessie movie or a dinosaur movie. So you kind of see the media kind of creates the monster. Like with Bigfoot, like look at like movies like Harry and the Hendersons. Look at Falk Monster. Look at The Legend of Boggy Creek. That movie created a narrative for that monster, for that creature seen in Falk, Arkansas. So
yeah, but there were sightings. I mean, that's why the movie was made, because of the sightings that in that area.
Yes,
that's where my family's from. I grew up with it.
Yes.
But I understand what you're saying. There was another documented report of Nessie, and that's the one back in the 1600s?
Yes, you're referencing the sign of Saint Columba. The stories of Saint Columba. Supposedly there was a creature in the river Ness. Actually, the stories go that it was the river Ness that connects to Loch Ness and the ocean. There was this creature, and it killed a human, and that it would roar and make a lot of noise. Because that could be possibly a reference to Nessie, but it's just hard to say because, at least in my opinion, my own personal feelings, a lot of lake monsters and these loch monsters most likely can't exist because, just from a biological standpoint, you have to have a population between 50 and 500 to survive. How are you going to have 50 to 500 plesiosaurs living in Lake Champlain? It's likelihood is very low.
I mean, unless you had one that just lives a long, long time and reproduces asexually, is almost impossible.
Yes, it's possibility in some reptiles, but it has been shown that plesiosaurs, especially, did live birth like mammals.
Right.
So it's funny when you look at it. It's like, okay, the likelihood of these is very unlikely, and with science, it's about plausibility, not just possibility. Like, yes, it's possible. Is it plausible? No. Sea monsters, I have a very more likelihood of believing in, like Hadrosaurus of Chadwick Bay. That's more likely to exist than Ogopogo. So it's like a lot of these lake monsters, I do put research into them, but people ask me about lake monsters. I'm like, I might not know a lot about that. Let me get back to you about that.
I got to ask you, Ryan. I get it. You're in the science area, and I take it you're more in the flesh and blood camp. And I love whatever camp anybody's in. But what's your thoughts, though, to these people that suggest that perhaps Bigfoot is part of the paranormal realm or the woo? You got Ron Moorhead, who has the quantum theory that suggests that they convert their mass into energy to transport through portals, to go from one area to the next in a matter of minutes, covering miles. I know you're pretty open-minded to most things, and I know you probably respect Ron a little bit. He even goes as far as saying they're aliens now, believe it or not.
Yeah.
That's another subject for another day. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, with me, I am very scientifically minded. I try to be, at least. I try to be as grounded in reality as I can be. But yet still have speculation. Cryptozoology is a science of speculation, I like to say. But you can only speculate so far. You can't say some. You have to, if you have, like what Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. If you want to claim like these creatures are ghosts or spirits or quantum mechanics or something like that, you need to have the evidence for it. And in my opinion, there's more evidence for these being existing, living, breathing creatures than to being some type of quantum mechanical species that can move across dimensions. That's a possibility, yes, but it's a possibility. And also, like what our good friend Chris Jordan says from the Curious Realm, if you're going to prove Sasquatch comes in a portal, you have to prove the portal and the Bigfoot. You have to prove that portal first. And like a lot of times people bring up the idea of like, oh, well, I saw a UFO and then I saw a Sasquatch. They have to correlate. Not necessarily. I've told this for years. Correlation is not causation. Just because you see a UFO on your property, then you see a dogman the next day, doesn't necessarily mean a dogman came from a UFO. There might be us both occurring at the same time. If I am at my house and I stomp my foot and then a car honks his horn outside, I didn't cause the car horn to honk. I just did it at the same time. Like, it's a lot of times I bring this up, especially with a lot of people that have these ideas like, oh, I have dogman on my property, I have Bigfoot on my property, my house is haunted, I see UFOs all the time. That's unlikely. Or even if it is all happening, cool. Doesn't mean it's causing one another. Like, for instance, I've had a Bigfoot experience down at Bound Springs, but I've also seen a UFO, I've also seen ghosts. Does that mean they all correlate? No, because first of all, if you're in the paranormal community, you're more likely to have an experience because you're going out there seeking that out. And sooner or later, let's be honest, like we brought up the paranormal earlier, if you're in the paranormal, Bigfoot's going to be brought up at some point. So you're more likely to maybe research Bigfoot. So, well, a lot of times I bring this up to, like, let's bring it up to someone that's never experienced anything paranormal or UFO or Bigfoot, someone that's totally out of the field. Talk to them about it, and they're like, no, that's weird. Why would they all correlate? And I'm like, exactly. Correlation does not mean causation. You can't solve one mystery with another one. You can't answer one question with another question. We're not politicians here. We have to get straight.
Yeah, I got you. You mentioned if we're seeking the paranormal, we're more likely to find the paranormal. Mm-hmm. What if you're seeking the paranormal, but you run into a Bigfoot?
Well, what does that mean? Okay, if you'll, for instance, like Jason says, if you see a 10-foot tall creature with red eyes in the woods, it's Bigfoot. If you see it in your house, it's a demon. Yes, that is true. But let's just say you're seeking out ghosts in a haunted area, and then you see a Bigfoot. This doesn't necessarily mean a Bigfoot is a ghost or correlates to them. It could be just two things occurring at the same time. If I was in a haunted house and then I saw a rat, I'm not like, oh, that rat's a ghost or something like that. It just means it's two things happening at the same time. Just because Bigfoot's an unknown phenomena, a lot of people correlate it to ghosts because that's also an unknown phenomena. A lot of times people try to make that correlation. Like when you bring up the paranormal, people think UFOs, ghosts, and Bigfoot, or cryptids, because those are all unknown phenomena. Not necessarily mean that they correlate to each other, but they do correlate in one way. They're unknown. They're mysteries. We don't know about them. So if we don't know about them, they could be anything.
Yeah, quite frankly, with that term paranormal, I think the people would agree that paranormal, basically, Brandy, you've said this, paranormal is something we don't know anything about. I mean,
it's beyond science. You know, it's just beyond.
So it's a lot of people get that. Now today, I know better than I did years ago, but today it's like anything can be paranormal.
Yeah,
some people consider me to be paranormal because I'm different. Texas always thought
science. You're beyond science.
I'm beyond science. I'm beyond this realm, is what I am.
Well, I have
to live in my own reality.
Hey, I'm Santa, so I'm paranormal.
Right.
Yeah.
I do have to say something, and it's going back on what Ryan was saying about aliens and blah blah blah. I mean, there is an issue. There's a super huge issue. Tex, you were even talking about yourself that we may be on the same path with Sasquatch as we are with aliens. I just can't understand maybe somebody can explain it to me, how we can take people, put them on the moon, but we can't get to the bottom of our own ocean.
Well,
I'm not getting it. I am just not getting it. I mean, again, that brings me to the point. Are there things down there that we're not supposed to see or supposed to know about again?
Oh.
Possibility.
Ryan, yeah, I will say yes. Go ahead, Ryan.
It's a possibility.
Since you breached that, I want
I
Ryan's
poked a hole in the
opinion.
platform. That's all there is to it.
Well, I want Ryan's opinion on something. I've never actually talked to him about it, and honestly, it just popped in my head. Megalodon.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
The idea if Megalodon still exists, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
with me, possibility, but the plausibility is very low. Because, again, it's the idea of like, okay, if Megalodon existed, there's only a couple things that it could feed on, and that's whales. Only whales. That's the only thing it could feed on because of how big it is. But if there were Megalodon, let's just take, for instance, a population of 500 Megalodon across the whole globe, ecologically, we would tell that. We would be able to identify, okay, there's a bunch of whales going missing in one area. Why is that? Or there's a bunch of sightings of these large sharks. I believe there are giant sharks out there, yes. But most likely, if what they are most likely aberrations of the great white shark. Because scientifically, recently it's been shown that Megalodon looked like a giant great white shark, but it was a lot heavier, had a lot more kind of blubber to it because it lived in colder environments, colder areas of water. Because that's why when the passage of water goes throughout the ocean, the warm ocean go to the cold. The Megalodon primarily lived in cold areas because colder water makes for larger bodies because you need a larger body to be in colder areas. So when it comes to these giant sharks being seen off the coast of Africa, or the Diablo Negro of the Sea of Cortez, most likely they aren't Megalodon. They could be aberrations of great white sharks, maybe a new species, or maybe a subspecies that grows a little bit larger. Because we don't really have any fossil evidence of Megalodon surviving, but also we don't have any fossil evidence of Bigfoot either. So that's not really a claim right there. We can't really use that.
Right.
It's our own claim for other cryptids, which is hilarious. But for me, it's a possibility that it does exist, but there's not a lot of evidence for it, which I would need to really look at the evidence for it. I know the HMS Beagle brought up Megalodon teeth, and they couldn't be dated until a couple hundred years ago. But at that time, the carbon dating was very, very lax, was very in its infancy. So it could have been a mistake. And there are some signs. Huh?
Why don't they redate them?
I believe because I don't think they've done them recently, but that's something like that. Why don't we just do it? For instance, museums. Usually museums have thousands of bones and pieces like that they don't know where they're from. They just haven't. They're in a warehouse somewhere.
Well, see, and that's where the whole conspiracy side of it comes in. So because you can't. Good grief.
Donnie's on fire.
Donnie's been drinking.
Bottle of wine. Second bottle of wine for Donnie Chokes that stuff.
We love you, Donnie.
Yes, we do, Donnie.
Nelly.
And it's the next sushi roll. Yeah. Absolutely.
Let's admit it. If we discovered Megalodon, we will try to eat it. Let's admit it.
My thing is,
salad. Why not?
My thing is, you've got, just like you said, Ryan, you've got these bones, this material, these teeth that were dated, but the dating wasn't as reliable as it is now, and it's not 100% now.
Yeah,
but you've got it where it's more reliable than it was supposedly, and they just sat there and nobody said, I mean, that's not very good. That's not being a very good scientist type guy. you know?
Yeah. Like, it's science with me. It's scientists' job. It's a scientist's job to. Geez, now I'm messing up my word. Good job, text. You're rubbing off on me. It's scientists' job to answer questions and make questions, not just be in some dogma and be stuck in the ideas. At
Right.
one time, we thought the Earth was flat. Now we know it's round. At one time, we thought.
Well, it depends who you ask.
Yeah. At one time, we thought the Earth was the center of the universe. Now we know it's not. It's about changing ideas, changing. Like, for instance, going back to the whole Bigfoot phenomenon. 20, 30 years ago, if you said Giganto was Bigfoot, everyone would have said yes. Nowadays, we don't because the ideas have changed, because the data has changed. Science and belief and our viewpoints should change according to the data that comes in forward. For instance, that's why I like paleoanthropology, the study of human evolution. It can change from one discovery. For instance, Homo neanderthalensis, when it was first discovered, changed paleoanthropology. Recently, Homo denisova, the Denisovans, showed that there are other human-like species, Homo floresiensis of Flores. All these discoveries automatically change our viewpoints of our own human lineage. And that's what I think Bigfoot would do when it's discovered one day. Yes, it would change our viewpoints of our own human lineage. Not necessarily, I hate when people say, oh, it's going to rewrite the history books. No, all it's going to do is add a couple chapters. We don't necessarily have to go back and rewrite stuff. Not necessarily, because it's always been there. We just have to add it to it. Not rewrite, just add to. Like,
Mhm.
Well, we do. We okay. So my one of my biggest deals about the arrogance and the arrogance of science.
yes.
They it's almost like they don't want to rock the boat. What they've said is what it is, and they don't want to deviate from that. I think it scares the hell out of them. But
Yes.
they're afraid to be wrong or change their stance or something. How many years did it take for them to admit when they found out that all these different species of triceratops that they were talking about weren't different species? They were just different ages of the same damn thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It took a long time. Like, for instance, and recently, last year, we had the idea of the most famous dinosaur in the world, Tyrannosaurus Rex. We
Right.
thought there was a new subspecies, the Tyrannosaurus queen, they would call it, a new subspecies. Just from a couple bones that were a little bit morphologically different. That's kind of the hard thing with paleontology. One morphological difference can mean a whole different species. Which, with me, I don't know. I'm not really in that world. I'm not classically trained in paleontology, so I can't really have an opinion on it. But it's kind of weird. Like, for instance, like you brought up Triceratops. We thought there were multiple species until we proven that it was the same animal, but just through different life stages. Pachycephalosaurus. If you ever watched Jurassic Park, the ones with the dome heads that hit each other.
Mm-hmm.
We thought there were 2 or 3 different species until we've proven recently it's just the same species but at different developmental stages. So that's the thing with science, is that if you don't bring in maybe different perspectives, it cannot change. Like the ideas of, like, if you think of academia, if you think of science, you think of some old person in a giant house or something like that, or you think of people that have been in academics since they were like 40 and haven't changed since then. That's why I think new perspectives are important. That's why one thing with cryptozoology is very important to me, is bringing in this next generation of cryptozoologists. Like our good friend Josh Turner, he's looked at me and he said, "You're the next generation, Brian. You need to keep this stuff going." And I'm like, "Please don't put that on me. Don't put that pressure on me." But to an extent, I agree with it. Like, I want to bring in new perspectives, new ideas into this field, because who is the next generation of cryptozoologists? There really aren't that many.
I have to agree with him. I mean, I was excited when we all went out, for a trip, and we had 3 young men with us that were in their early 20s that were not only interested in the subject, but were well, two of them are one of them's just learning, but A-Rod, but
Yeah.
You and Nick, I mean, you've got the knowledge, you've got the drive, and you've got the experiences between the two of you. And it was, for me, it was very exciting to see, and I'm sorry, but y'all are the next generation of this, because we're not going to live forever, but to carry on and keep this in the forefront, because it's like anything else. If we quit talking about it, it's going to get buried.
Yeah. Like,
I think that if we're not out there demanding answers, that we're never going to get them, that it's going to get swept under the rug from the people who do know.
Right.
Yes. And it's like, that's the thing where, like, with me, like, a good friend of ours, Ken Gerhardt, me and him have talked at length, and it's like, we and him, we have very similar viewpoints. And I'm like, I'm not coming after your job one day, Ken, but I want to be right exactly where you are one day. Because who's going to be the next Lyle Blackburn? Who's going to be the next Ken Gerhardt? Who's going to be the next Lauren Coleman? Who's going to be the next Jeff Meldrum? Like, you need that next generation of scientists and researchers.
That's the name you left out.
Tex Wesson.
Thank you. Good.
Well,
see, and I understand, Ryan, where you're going with that sentiment.
Yeah.
I mean, who are the next ones going to be?
yeah,
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see another. I want to see new.
yeah.
So I want to see
Yeah.
the new Ryan Edwards. You know
I
what I mean? I
totally
want to
agree.
see what you come up with, what you've got. And that's what is exciting. I mean, because the Bigfoot community is older. I'm just going to say that is older. So
Yes.
we are very excited and very stoked about, a younger generation coming in and maybe digging up answers we never got.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
I gotta say too, with everybody that has spoke on this, and for you particularly, Ryan, the old folks, the older guys have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. I respect their opinion, their thoughts, all the hard work they put into the research. But sometimes when you keep hearing the same old, it kind of doesn't draw interest in the field, right? Now, with the younger generation coming up in their 20s, 30s, like yourself, yes, you need that fresh outlook, that input, the new research, the new methods, develop new methods of research, right? And I think you guys are the innovators for tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to do in the next decade, man.
Yep, and
If
that's
I make it that long.
I know
Thank
you
you,
guys
Justin.
are. Yeah, and like that's the thing,
Justin
like
Boyd for the win.
Justin.
like that's like one thing. For instance, like bringing up the FOUT conference. I think Craig told me, he's like, dude, you're 22. You might be one of the youngest speakers ever at the FOUT conference, because you don't see many young people at the position you're at. Simply.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's one thing that, like, I'm like, no, I want to bring in those young people. I want to bring in that new, fresh blood into this viewpoint. Because, like, for instance, look at cryptozoology and Bigfoot in general. The ones that came before us, the Four Horsemen, the John Greens, and Old M, and the Grover Krause. They had very much a flesh and blood perspective. That was their perspective. And now if you look at most Sasquatch and Bigfooters nowadays, it's kind of changed over the years. It's evolved. It's changed. A lot of people now see it as like, okay, could it be alien? Could it be demonic? Could it be a spirit of some sort? You see the ideas change as the people in the field change as well. That's why, like, for instance, Wolf, Josh Turner's giving me a lot of if on it. He's like, hey, yeah, your viewpoints, you and Ken's viewpoints are there, but they're very much the old guard of Bigfooting.
Yeah.
Of like, it's an ape, it's straight up biological, oldest. But how I see it, times and viewpoints do change. Like, for instance, with me and the whole Dogman phenomenon. When I was younger, I thought the Dogman was some type of biological walking wolf that walked on two legs. But thanks to the data that I've seen recently, my viewpoint has changed on that. I think it's something else. I don't think it's biological at all. So if I say to my dogmatic viewpoints, I would still think it's some type of living, breathing creature. But because I didn't, and I was willing to show that, oh, I was wrong, let me change that, I now have a different viewpoint.
Well, I got to tell you, it's been a heck of a show, Ryan, and I love when I get to sit down and talk to you because we run into each other at the conferences most of the time.
Yeah,
and I can't wait to share the stage with you in Falk. It's going to be awesome. But it's never fails to be just a mind blowing conversation because you are. I mean, as young as you are, you're a wealth of knowledge, and if people will sit down and listen to you and put your, because I'll be honest with you, a lot of older folks have a problem with somebody young telling them something.
Yes.
Boy, you don't teach me nothing. Well, if you shut up and listen, he will.
Yeah, I agree with Tex. That's such a true point. But I have to say this about Ryan: he's so unassuming, and he's not forcing this. He's just offering.
Right.
I like his style. Right, it's something that if I were a
beat you over the
staunch
head.
researcher, I'm like, I would listen. Some of these the thing about the younger people that are out there, they're just like robust and they're conceited to a point, and they're not been doing this for 2 years. But Ryan, you come off like a seasoned veteran despite being 22. So that's really it's really sweet. It's really you carry yourself well.
Yeah, you damn sure ain't no greenhorn. Hey, before we get out of here, I got a little announcement to make.
Thank you, Tex.
It's about the front porch. Okay, Texas Front Porch. One, we hit 5K last night. Thank you very much for everybody.
Yes.
I couldn't ask for a better birthday present. But we couldn't ask for a better birthday present. Do I have to share my birthday with you too?
No, just the 5,000.
Well, now that I share with everybody. You, Krista, Rob, Jason, wherever he's at. Donnie, Danielle, I mean, all of you.
We love y'all.
Even Randy.
Even Randy.
But we are going to have a members only show this coming week. I'll put the date out there as soon as I talk to my gorgeous co-host over there.
As soon as he talks to me about it.
No in charge.
But we're gonna, and I'm gonna show y'all what we're gonna give away. But you got to get over there and become a member.
Yeah.
We're gonna give this sticker away. It is Saint Sasquatch. It's a window sticker. Saint Sasquatch. The saint of rivers and fishing.
I like that.
Nice.
We're also going to, I pulled this out of New Mexico. Bigfoot spotted me in Cloudcraft, New Mexico. No one believes him.
That's cool.
And this. I'm going to give away the ball cap. You're going to have to fight Brandy for it. But
if you win, you got to fight me for it. That's it.
So
I might have to consider becoming a member now.
So jump over there and become a porcher. It's only $3.
Right? And don't forget, if you haven't joined up for Bigfoot Michigan Rob's channel, you can find him on the R Pirate.
Yeah.
Get on over there and subscribe to him.
Yeah, a BMR Pirate R. Hey, and by the way, I'm not as big as Tex, but I only need 10 more people to get to 3,600.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we're starting to hit milestones, and it's all because of everybody listening, all the people in chat. We love you. Thank you for showing up every show, week after week, and we just couldn't do it without you.
And honestly, thank you so much for the support, because this stuff is not free. I mean, let's just be honest.
Right.
There's stuff that we have to pay for to keep stuff going. You got PO boxes, you got subscriptions to StreamYard, you got all kinds of stuff. And not to mention, when we go on these outings or research, to bring you content, it takes a little of the burden off of us, and helps with gas. Folks, we're not.
Justin.
like I said, Justin Boyd for the win. Thank you.
For the win.
Thank you, brother.
Oh,
See, it's my birthday and I'm bringing y'all money. What's up with that?
oh yeah.
I'll see you next month. I'll buy you dinner. How about
Ah,
that?
there you go.
All right.
Yeah, you know how that's going to go down. But I just really want to say thank you to everybody out there that supports us, and y'all go over there and hit subscribe on Bigfoot Michigan Rob. He's got a pretty good thing going over yonder. And if you haven't subscribed to the girls, I don't know why you wouldn't have by now. Hit that subscribe and thumbs up for Blondes and Booze. And don't forget, Donnie Cho Says Stuff is over there. If you he's a little rough around the edges, but he's funny.
Yeah, that's not for the faint of heart and the easily offended.
Donnie shows you kick back, you relax. You kick back, you relax on Donnie's show.
Grab your popcorn. Yeah. It's adult entertainment.
Justin, man, you rock, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin.
Amazing.
But don't forget, but while we're all doing this, don't forget Ryan Edwards. You can get his books on Amazon. You can go see him next month at the Fouke, Arkansas Bigfoot Conference, along with Tex Wesson and myself. We'll be there. And, we were talking about bringing the younger generation into the whole Bigfoot cryptid whole thing. My daughter, my youngest one, is the only one I've got out of 3.
Oh,
That's interesting. I got 1. So
well, it's 33%. That's not a bad clip.
Yeah, that's
not bad. It's not bad. So,
but we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you to Linda Dale, the new member, 1234, gifting those memberships, and Donnie Cho like 3 times. Liberty, thank you so much. Suji, a new member and gifted memberships. Thank you. Justin Boyd, 3 times again. Hat trick. Thank y'all so much for everything, guys. It really does help. And y'all come see us. And don't forget about June. We got the Alabama Bigfoot Conference.
Yes.
Ryan's going to be there.
Yes.
And the whole Porch family is going to be there. The Blondes and Blues are going to be there. Rob's going to be there. Danielle Diva will be there.
Jason McLean will be there.
Randy will be there. Kristen and Brandy.
Barton, Nunnelly.
Yeah, Barton speaking.
Barton Nunnelly, Daryl Denton, Martin Groves, Greg Ogles.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Greg Ogles. I mean, man, Anita has been nice enough to let us help her put this one together, and it's been a hell of a ride. And
absolutely,
I got to give a shout out to Sidekicks. They are our sponsor. And
Sidekicks.
Be sure, Sidekicks, and be sure and go check them out, and tell them Tech sent you. Yeah. But Ryan, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Every time I get to talk to you, man. I love you.
Guys, it's always a good conversation.
It was a great time.
And let me finish out by saying next Thursday night, don't forget, we have Thomas Ferrario, who is I'm not going to say what he is exactly. I'm letting him explain himself, but he is associated with Marley Woods, which is just like the Skinwalker Ranch, but it's only located in Missouri. So this is going to be an exciting interview because I just love talking to this guy anyway. So it's going to be a great interview. And Friday's show is still to be announced. We haven't decided what we're coming up with yet. I know that Krista and I will be out of town. We will be at the Women of the Paranormal Conference in Harriman, Tennessee. So I don't know who's going to invade the Blondes then, but just somebody will be here. Somebody will show up, I promise you.
It will be me and Rob. Just putting
yeah, and God help us all. Just saying.
Right. Hey, we may bring Donnie and Randy with us.
Yeah, Donnie, Randy, Robbie, and Texie. That'll be interesting.
Oh my God, no!
We may even drag Ryan into this fray.
Oh,
I'll be
Jesus.
down for it.
Yeah. Hey, Sunday, we're doing we've got Truth or Tinfoil,
Yes, 5 p.m. Central.
and then we've got the new episode of Infamous Minds.
Infamous
We're doing live now, and the gentleman right here, Mr. Bigfoot Michigan Rob, is going to be with me and Danielle, and we're going to be talking about Lisk, the Long Island serial killer.
See,
Um,
I'm really going to be listening to that one on Sunday because, that one has fascinated me for a long time because it's gone on for a long time, and I'm excited. I'm excited. So I can't wait to listen.
Well, I'll extend the invitation to you, so you can come on and talk if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah.
But and then Monday, what's Monday? Oh, Monday on Texas Front Porch, we have me and Brandy. Well, you have Divas Dimension at 7, and
Yes.
then you have Texas Front Porch. I don't know what she's doing, but on the porch we have Kristen Payton, and she was part of Jessica Jones's crew, and she she knew the late great Grumpy Bob Wilson, and we will be sharing some. We're going to be celebrating his life for a little while, and be talking about some weird stuff that happened in the meadow. Man, y'all don't want to miss that.
Right.
Tuesday, Bob, what do you got cooking?
Tuesday night with Chris. This will be me and Chris are rolling. It's the 1 month out. It's the one show of the month where Chris and I just kick back and talk about the past week's shows and put them all together. That's always a fun time. And then Thursday for brunch, I've got Karen Winston on. She's a paranormal author, researcher. She has a best-selling book, by the way, that hit actually on New York Times. She'll be joining us Thursday afternoon at noon or 1 o'clock p.m. to discuss her research in the paranormal.
Awesome. It's going to be a great week of shows.
It is.
Absolutely.
And don't forget Truth or Tinfoil and Infamous Minds is Sunday.
Is Sunday. And if Paranormal Among Us Paul is still there, his show, he's on at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. So if you got time, check him out. And with that being said, it's time to go.
We'll see y'all later. Have a great
day.
Texas got to find the damn button again.
Find the button.